Yeah.
That freaking reminds me that I wanted to tell you about my story about my sleep paralysis experience.
In
My
Italy. Okay,
first
let's
ever sleep paralysis experience. Okay,
all right.
bro, it was.
Hold it.
It's hard. Dreams are hard to kind of remember fully after. It's just fucking difficult. But from what I do remember, I was in my bed, and it was the bed that I slept in the room that I was in growing up during like my high school time, because I swapped rooms in the house a few times because I
Okay.
have older siblings. When they would move out, kind of move to a new room, stuff like that. So I just remember being in the bed with my dog who passed away a few years ago.
This is the dream you're
And
remembering.
yes, my childhood dog, I'm in my bed and my dad calls me, and I go to pick up my phone and I pick it up in the dream, and I can't speak and I can't move. And
Jeez.
he's talking, he's like, hello, hello. And I'm like, like, I cannot get it out. And this was happening for like, it felt at least in the dream, like 10 minutes.
So
And
wait a
then,
minute. You had sleep paralysis in a dream. So you dreamt about having sleep paralysis.
yes. And then I woke up and the same thing was happening. I eventually woke myself up. And then when I was awake, I was still experiencing it. Then I tapped Bella and I spoke because I was concerned that I wasn't actually able to. And it was the first time when I spoke to her, I was like, babe, I had a crazy dream. It was like, oh my God, I can speak again. Because in that moment, I was like, I need to say something to see if I can speak. So I was like,
Hmm.
Bella. And I was like, oh God. I'm like, thank God I can fucking finally speak. Dude, it was nuts. But the craziest part is once it was over, I kind of wanted to go back.
Really?
Isn't that super weird?
Yeah,
There
that is a
was,
weird.
it was
Like,
just such an interesting feeling and experience that I wanted to go back to it. It was
I,
kind of
I
weird.
think it's different too. So I'll say this: your experience, because I hadn't heard how it was. I just know you mentioned it, and you said that we'll talk about it later. That's very different than like Mel, for example, gets sleep paralysis or has had sleep paralysis more than once, and the
Damn.
experience that she explains it, and what a lot of people explain it when you have it like first person the entire time, is basically you wake up, you feel like something's pressing your chest. Some people even see things like a monster or like a
Right.
demon, and they all say that it looks the same way, which is scary to me. To say
Right.
like everyone's seeing the same little creepy demon guy sitting on your chest, but then you can't move, and you're like, but in real life. So one
Mm.
time, the worst experience I've had with this with her was I don't do this a lot since I was a kid, but I used to do it like all the time when I was a kid, but not when I'm an adult. But we lived in Norwell back in Massachusetts. We had this tiny home, so it's all open, like a loft, bedroom, and all this stuff. So we had these alarms that, like like smoke alarms, gas alarms, those type of
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of making like a beeping sound, it would say like alert, 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 and like talk.
I think I've heard of one of those before.
Yeah, and super annoying, super like a man's voice. And then my wife Mel had a sleep paralysis like moment when that went off. So she's freaking out because she thinks like she doesn't know what's happening in the house. All she hears is someone talking, like alert, alert, and it's across the entire house because it's open. It's a tiny home.
Right.
And then she's freaking out because she can't wake me up to do anything. She's like scared and like having all this anxiety and all this noise. And then on top of it, I wake up doing what I used to do as a kid. I scream. I used to have, like night terror. So when she wakes me up and I'm scared, I usually wake up and I'm like, if you wake me up like and I'm not ready, I wake up kind of startled. Don't know why.
Yeah.
Just always done it. And then I used to
Yeah.
scream a lot when I was a kid. So imagine my
Whoa.
wife having sleep paralysis. I'm waking up
Whoa.
and then I'm not like in sleep paralysis, but I don't know what I'm doing until like I'm screaming, but I'm not fully awake yet. So then
Yeah.
she has alert, alert going off. She doesn't know what's going on, and it's flashing a light. By the way, this I didn't put
Dude.
flashing light. It's dark, flashing, screaming. Some dude screaming, and then me going ah because I'm scared. And then I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? I'm like, what, babe? And then like freaking out, bro. I destroyed. I took out all the fire alarms. I destroyed them. I like filled up the thing. I was like, no, I'd rather die by fire and smoke. I'll wake up before that happens again. And we
That
couldn't
sounds
sleep.
insane.
Like we couldn't sleep the rest of the night. It was just a terrible experience. I don't think I really have had it fully. I've had it like partially, but it's usually because I scream or get startled, and I don't sleep a lot too. So
Jesus.
but yeah, I'm not a
One of
fan
the
of any of those things.
when I after it happened, I looked it up. I'm like, this is definitely sleep paralysis. But let me just look up the definition of sleep paralysis. And it only mentioned moving, because one of the things that really caught me was that I couldn't speak either in
Mm.
the dream. And I didn't spend too much time looking into it, but I was curious as to like
They say
what that's
talking is the
called,
thing.
or if that's a different section, or if it's just all included in in sleep
Yeah, it's like
paralysis.
basically you're paralyzed, right? So that's why they call it sleep paralysis. And then
Mm,
it could be a lot of times people say they can't vocalize. So they usually a lot of times like they're like trying to scream
dude.
and it won't come out. And I'm like, bro, that's so constraining and tight on me. I'm like, I could not. I don't know how to do that. It's like
And
claustrophobic almost.
it's my first time I've ever experienced that. I've heard of it, of course. I've had people that have experienced it around me before too. But it being when I'm abroad on vacation, like that was a very interesting time for my body
At
to
least it
choose to
wasn't a
do it. And
negative.
it
Like I'm glad it
probably,
wasn't a negative version.
yeah, well, yeah. Thankfully, I didn't wake up scared. I woke up more like in disbelief that I had the experience, and I was like, "Oh my god, like this is what they've talked about. It just fucking happened to me. Like I know what it is. I'm not so scared because I have something to identify it with, you know? I feel like
Yeah,
if I would have woken up in a panic if I was like, I don't know what's happening, but as soon as it was happening, I was like, I know what this is. I need to
yeah.
stop it from happening. So it made it a little bit easier to process.
So outside of that sleep paralysis, how was
Phenomenal. Phenomenal.
like okay, let's go by steps. How was the food? Because that's like the biggest important thing. How much bread and pasta? How many pounds of
Dude,
bread and pasta did you eat?
dude, I texted this to you. I didn't plan on saying this on the podcast, but I think it's very informational for people to know that
Definitely.
I was there for a week. Okay, I had bread every day, wine, croissants, sandwiches, pizza, pasta, like all carbs, 100% carb diet.
God's food
And I took a shit twice that whole time.
that whole
And the
week.
day after I got back, yesterday, I shat 4 times in one day. That never happens. That never happens. That's like a
Just like you
two
caught up.
in
You caught
one.
up.
Yeah, my body just immediately, when I got back to drinking and eating like my food, my body was just like, oh, we're doing a detox, and just completely got rid of everything because, you know, when you're eating all of that kind of food, it can be difficult to digest and you just feel bloated all the time.
It's
But
also like you're not used to eating that food. Like, do you eat
yeah,
a lot
I'm
of
not.
pasta? Like
No, Bella
normally?
cooks it probably once a week, if not once every like week and a half, 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
we
so your
love
body's not
pasta.
used to
Pasta's
processing
like
it.
exactly pasta. I love pasta.
Bro,
Huge pasta
so good.
person.
And how about coffee? I know you're a coffee fanado with your
Yeah.
espressos. How'd you like the coffee up there?
Great. I mean, I'm used to drinking espresso every morning, and that's what I did there too. I did single shots. But here I usually do like a cream. Like I get a sweet cream and then I blend it in with the espresso. There, I just did straight shots. So that's not how I usually drink it, but it was still delicious.
Yeah,
Had that every morning with a croissant, basically, if not like with some
croissant.
type of bread.
Mm.
Dude,
What was
delicious.
okay?
So fresh too. So fresh. The
Sights.
croissants are like can just break in your
Yo,
hand if
yeah,
you
just like
squeeze them. So
yeah, all the
soft.
layers. And then, I mean, I'm hungry. I'm
The
gonna eat after
first day I
this.
went to the Pantheon. That was the first
Okay,
day. That
fun.
was like cool. Whatever.
Hmm.
It was cool. It was cool. But not compared to the second day where I think hold on, I have to remind myself now. I think the second day oh no, so the first day we went to the Trevi Fountain and we went to the Pantheon. Trevi Fountain's beautiful. Just gorgeous statues like surrounding
Did
this
you
entire
did you do the what do you call the flick
yeah,
of the thing
the
behind you?
coin toss.
Yeah.
And that's part of another take that I have. The people were asking me earlier because they say that when you flip the coin over your right shoulder into the fountain, it's basically signifying that you'll return to Rome one day. And I did that and don't feel like I want to go back to Rome. I don't feel
Really?
like, yeah, I think Rome was like a one time. I don't really have any necessity or desire to go back. Not that I hated
Mm.
it. It's just I went there and got everything that I felt like I needed. Does that make sense?
You came and you conquered. It's a literally a
Came and I
Italian.
conquered.
Yeah.
Very fitting
I
for
came, I saw, and conquered. Is that what it is? I came, I saw, I conquered. I think it's what it is.
sounds
Vini,
familiar.
Vinci, Vinci. Um, all right. What's the top? So you mentioned some of the things. You mentioned you're not probably gonna go back. What were the top sites or places you went to? For me, it would have been
Colosseum.
Sistine Chapel, obviously. For me, I have a passion for that
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah, Sistine Chapel was gorgeous. It was very funny because It's a huge tour, so it's a part of the Vatican, and
Mm,
within the Vatican, there's thousands, well, not thousands, but there's a ton of museums in the Vatican. So
yeah,
you kind of go through a tour. And have you ever been to the Sistine?
I haven't got the chance to.
No. So there's a bunch of
I really want to go to the
museums.
Vatican. The Vatican's like a place I want to storm really badly. I
Mm,
want to stay there for days.
yeah, we did it all. We did it. We were there all day basically. There's a lot to do. A lot of sculptures, paintings,
Mm,
so much art, and the Sistine Chapel is the thing at the end. And although it was gorgeous when we were there, I didn't feel like it was the most beautiful thing that I saw there that
really.
day.
What was the most beautiful
Which,
thing you saw your fiance?
yes, absolutely. Didn't. There was other artwork that was super dope, but even like the sculptures were mesmerizing when you're looking at them. You're like, how the fuck did someone make that? Like that's just seems ridiculously difficult, especially at that time. But I
Do you
mean,
look at that
that's not
stuff like there? I'm not sure if you have the same idea. I get this every time I go to a museum. It's very tough for me to sometimes look at modern day art in the
mm,
same reference as like these artworks and these pieces. Like, I go to through a museum, even like even closer history. So, for example, I go through a museum. I go through like Renaissance era, or when they're sculpting, doing these things, and then I go through the American wing, which is a newer wing, obviously, because American cult is not very old. And I'm like,
mm,
this is crap compared to this. What happened in this time frame of like before technology started getting good that we suck now? I just don't
yeah,
I feel like we do, and it's like, "Oh, no, it's because we," I'm like, "No, where do you see these people making that?" There's a lot of cool stuff on the internet, and I think NFTs and all these things. Sure, there's great artists still,
yeah.
but it's like simplified. Like it's not easy, but
Mm.
it's easier than carving into stone with your bare
Dude,
hands a
I was just
masterpiece.
my cousin picked me up from the airport, from Logan Express. It's a bus that you take to a nearby
Yeah.
town, and we were talking about it in the car because I was talking to her about a story that I have to tell you about the Coliseum, which I mentioned on stream, which is just insane. But
Mm,
it was revolved. The moral of the story was the lengths that people went to back then, and the beautiful things that they were able to create with less than what we have now, as far as tools go. And we were having the same conversation, like it's just so ridiculous, it's so crazy how beautiful the things and how majestic and what seemed impossible back then, how they were able to accomplish it. And I was like, man, it just feels like it's almost like like the willpower, like the
mm,
need, the desire to have to go, and the obstacles you have to go through to get that far. Like now
yeah.
things are much easier and people don't have the same willingness or sacrifice to create something great. And I think that just is probably reflective of our environment and like what it takes to survive and what you need to, you know what I'm saying? Like the how far you have to go. That
Yeah,
makes
I mean,
sense.
I was, there's a that saying too where it's like, um, difficult times create great men
Mm-hmm.
or strong men. Strong men create great times or good times, and then revolving good times create weak men.
Mm-hmm.
Weak men create bad times. Bad times. So I think it's like a revolving thing.
Right.
I don't know when we're gonna get there again because now it's kind of like technology has changed a lot of that, where things have become more simple and easy.
Mm.
Um, but even just like think about it, there's seven wonders of the world, right? Till
Yeah.
this day, what wonder has? There's like very few that we've created. I think the more recent ones are like the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a
I
monumental
think,
thing,
yeah, yeah.
right? It's Burj Khalifa, I think it's called
Yes, yes,
the
yes.
tall building. You have the Statue of Liberty, which is still older. Like it's in the 2000s. There's very little like that monumental, huge things, and we've yet to make stuff like the pyramids, like things in Europe that are just there. I think our drive for like efficiency and minimalism and then just like technological push is
Mm-hmm.
taken away from like that artistry that you see
Mm-hmm.
in those things that you don't see nowadays. It's like, cool, I like some modern minimalistic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at a certain point, is it so minimalistic? Is it so like is there so little
Yeah.
to it that you're actually losing beauty as much as you want to say it's beautiful? It's like that's not going
Yeah.
to be hanging in like, it's difficult
And
for me to
you
say.
know, and something that my mom mentioned too, that further that point is back then there was such a desire to be able to communicate. and
Mm.
you would do and draw anything that you could to be able to communicate your experiences, what has gone on in your life, or trying to communicate to someone else who doesn't know your language, and there's no other way at that time to learn how to communicate things. So that
Yeah.
desire to have to go as far as you possibly can to be able to communicate your message, and that desire, it's not where we are right now. There are easy ways to tell a story, to use technology to help us in many ways create our art. Art is very
Yeah.
assisted today in many facets, like very just pure unaided art is not as popular to find. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
And
Even when it comes to education.
I don't think there's demand either, though. Like the issue
Right,
then being is
absolutely
no
there
one
is a
wants to see it.
demand, because
Like,
there's easier ways.
hmm
Why pay an artist 50 million to do this one thing when you could just create a small video to explain the same? What I'm saying? Like the
yep.
need to go that far is just not here anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like a double-edged sword. It's like it's
Yeah.
great. I'm obviously very grateful for technology and the advancements of the world,
Mm-hmm.
but you lose out on something that we had when it came to like craftsmanship,
Yeah.
leaders, a lot of these things, like the greats, like very historical people, where it's like we were watching Inglorious Bastards, and
Oh,
like
so fucking good, bro.
such a great
That
movie.
intro, that first 10 minutes,
Hmm.
the
Oh,
tension
amazing!
in that movie. Oh, so good.
I was
Continue.
mentioning to Mel, when you watch the movie again, realize how they don't really use music for like
Mm-hmm.
background sound, and
Mm-hmm.
they're just talking, so just clear talking,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel the tension, and you're like, man, I feel it in my gut.
Yeah.
Like
That's
that scene where he gets a milk with the girl, and you're like, does he know? Because he's asked for like
yeah.
that's super random, and then I'm like, the entire time it's like when he exits, she like tears down. I'm like, I feel the same way. I'm like, oh, I can breathe. Like so much anxiety just built up in that moment. Um,
Some of my favorite scores are composed by artists that appreciate silence and knows
mhm,
how to use it and uses it in their favor. There's so many composers that just their scores are so saturated. There's music all the time. You never get a break. And
mhm,
I love when movies use that to their advantage. It's just fucking just so good. And not that it's like in the same world, but even something as dramatic as A Quiet Place, bro, that movie theater experience was nuts. Did you see A Quiet Place in theaters?
yes,
Dude, like you
that was really
couldn't
well done.
even cough. If you were eating your popcorn, drinking your Coke, I could hear everything in the theater.
It
Everything was
was,
so loud because there was no
and even the
score, there's no
music.
talking,
Well, when they did add like little sounds, it was perfect. When they
minimal.
did add like music, like the musical score, like idea behind when he says like "I love you" and everything, I'm like, bro, that's so well done. Like they really
Hmm.
did that really well. You know, a movie that does that well too, but it was not as like intense. But Baby Driver did that a couple times too when
Oh,
he like
Baby Driver's a
was
great
really good.
one. And I love oh, what's his name? Ansel? Ansel Elgort? Is that his name? That actor.
Which one?
The main
Oh,
one?
Ansel and Agort,
Ansel.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah. Phenomenal actor. I feel like I haven't seen
he's
anything
been
with him in a
he's been on.
while.
Yeah, he's. I think he's been out for a little bit. I mean, also don't forget like he did that film with Kevin Spacey. I'm not sure if that was the case, but then I feel like he
Mm.
kind of just
He was doing
like I
music
said, like
too.
yeah, he's doing music. I think he did a musical and stuff. So he's definitely keeping active in other ways. I'm guessing. And then COVID kind of
That's
some people
true.
took it differently.
So that's true.
Dope.
Still
Italy
coming
was
from
cool,
that.
man. I can't wait to go. I wish I was able to go sooner, but definitely gonna
Yeah.
go
Definitely the
soon enough.
Colosseum to me was the best part. That's what will
Mm.
stick with me the
Did you go
most.
elsewhere outside of Rome?
Florence.
Okay. How was Florence?
Florence was beautiful. Very beautiful, very nice. We just did shopping there because it's kind of known for
Mhm.
its boutiques and leather specifically. So we spent like our Saturday there once we were completely done with
Nice,
Rome. That was beautiful too.
nice. And I guess I want to address the elephant in the room that we haven't addressed yet.
What's the elephant in the room?
Batman. Are we gonna get into Batman, or you're not
Oh
gonna even
shit!
talk
Hold
about it
on.
on record?
Can we do a timeout before we talk about Batman?